Welcome back to another Ask That. My name is Clark Sell, and we are here live at that conference. And with me today I have Ross Larson.
Nice to see you.
Sir, nice to see you again.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Go, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, we could.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we do, why don't you give everybody a quick introduction on
Sounds good.
who's Ross?
I am Ross. I am a human being. I do some code
that's
sometimes.
good.
Well, it's a good place to start as a base level.
Like that's a great baseline.
Yeah.
Human.
Yeah, that's my default profile when like websites that require me to fill in the profile information.
Okay.
Like indicating that I'm a human being it looks like it fills some of the text, but it doesn't really give a lot away. It just keeps a lot of the cards close to the chest.
You're not quite sure what type of human, just human.
Well, it's also you're not quite sure who's going to be seeing what you're what you're putting down. I'm a software developer. I work at WTS Paradigm. My day-to-day stuff is C# code. I recently started volunteering with the TEALS program to help the classroom enrichment experience for AP Computer Science for Madison Memorial High School.
Okay.
And this is my second year being a presenter at that conference.
Okay.
This year I gave a presentation on how about a Go, giving a general beginner's intro perspective on the Go programming language.
Right, and so I want to have this intimate conversation with you about this thing they call Go.
Yeah.
I'm really, really intrigued by the Google stack at the moment. I feel like there is a lot of goodness going on, although not very well known, if you will. And
I wouldn't say marketing is their strong suit.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And this isn't like a rally, hey, go. But I'm hearing more and more Go, and I'm hearing more and more enterprises like replacing old systems and moving to Go. And it's got me intrigued, and I do like the language. I'm not super good with it by any stretch. I've just fiddled around. But let's start at the beginning. Do we really need another language? Like, is Go filling a space that we don't have?
I think there actually was the thought that brought Go into existence was Rob Pike and Ken Thompson and another guy whose name eludes me right now. They kind of all came together and they were looking to solve problems that were Google problems initially. Okay. They were dealing with massive amounts of data. They had massive computing resources, but they couldn't very easily take advantage of them because the programming languages were built in a time before
these problems
multi-core
existed.
processors
Yeah, totally.
and these resources were just not available commonly. So being able to take advantage of them was not something that many programming languages were designed to solve.
Sure.
Also, another thing that Google was looking for was the ability to take a obviously smart enough to get hired at Google person and make them as productive as quickly as possible. So they made sure that simplicity and code readability were baseline,
bar one.
Important structurally, parts of the language that they needed to put in there.
Sure.
So they wanted to make it simpler in order to make it more powerful and to have very strong opinionated nature as to how things are done and how things should look so that anyone can look at a part of code and say, well, I'm pretty sure this is what's happening because this is how Go does things.
Right.
So they started as an internal project. They open sourced it in 2009. It was still not version 1 yet. Version
It's
1
been around longer than I really thought about.
Version 1 came out
almost in 10 years.
Yeah. Version 1 came out in 2012.
Okay.
So like the actual it's a thing has only been like 6 years. But they've been coming out with improvements kind of every 6 months since then.
Pretty
1.10, 1.11 is coming this month.
Okay.
And they're when they're adding new things, they tend not to. They tend to be very conservative in what they want to add to the language. But when they do something, there usually is a very good reason for them to do it.
Okay.
So 1.11 is bringing support for WebAssembly as a build target.
Interesting.
Because doing things in the browser is kind of important.
All right, so let's dive into a little bit to what Go is. I'm sure a number of folks aren't even familiar with what it is.
Sure.
I mean, and obviously language, we've kind of alluded to that, but
Yeah.
like in its essence, like what is Go, or what is it? How does it make itself different than, I don't know, JavaScript or C# or?
I would say Go is a language that is concurrency friendly to begin with.
Why do you use the word friendly?
Well, like you can use C++ and some other things to attempt to do things that take advantage of multiple resources, but because it wasn't built for that, it's usually a little bit more cumbersome to actually integrate that into like daily work and your actual code.
Okay.
Whereas the easiest way to show concurrency in Go is to have a print line statement that has the word Go before it and another print line statement. Put both of them in a loop and watch both of them, happen at the same time, and potentially have one finish twice before the other one finishes, and you've written basically 2 lines of code that are running concurrently.
Sure.
So you can much more easily take advantage of those resources without having to spend the time, putting that code together that will take advantage of all those resources. It's also meant to be readable and simple. And performant, so that wherever it runs and whatever it's doing, it can be done small and quickly or big and quickly. Because sometimes you use Go for small solutions, but you can also use them for the biggest solutions around. It'll happily take more resources once you've made your code be aware of the fact that it can take as much resources as it needs to do this job.
Right. Now, you didn't actually get into any of the Go can cross-compile into different Mac or Windows and all of that stuff. But
it wasn't really a main thing. It was a nice thing when I started. Actually, the reason why I kind of got into Go was last year at that conference, there was a presentation which wasn't technically about Go. It talked about static web systems and the ability to make, small amounts of text turn into entire websites with minimal fuss.
Sure.
One of the static site generators is Hugo, written in Go.
Yep.
You put down Markdown, you pick a theme,
you
type Hugo, and it's done. The site is made. And I thought that was kind of magical, and I wanted to figure out a little bit more, and that's kind of what led me to look more deeply into the language.
Interesting. But yet it is a core tenet of the language.
Absolutely.
But it's not a scripting language, right?
No. It is a compiled language, and it's a I would say, finicky compiled language insofar as it wants to tell you errors right away. It would at compile time.
At compile time or runtime?
At compile time.
Okay.
It does not want you to find errors at runtime. It definitely wants you to find errors at compile time.
Okay.
Even variables that you declare but don't use, that's a compile time error.
Oh,
so
interesting.
If you have the default debugging kind of plan of
ESLint on its best.
I assign a variable, I assign a variable, I assign a variable, I set debug points and I run, Go won't run that code.
Interesting.
Because you have declared variables that you weren't going to use.
Yeah, that goes back to your readability point.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where it's designed to make you think about what you're going to do before you do it, so that the next person who has to read it knows what you had intended to do.
Sure.
It's kind of cool.
So then what are people using Go to do?
The 2 biggest projects that use Go are Docker and Kubernetes.
Oh, really?
So
I didn't realize that.
So there's a lot of kind of the containerization and DevOps kind of cloud management is something that is done at the core with the Go programming.
Interesting.
So you can do a lot of that in Go. As far as what's possible, there are people who write APIs in Go. You can write a web scraper in Go. You can write a Slack bot in Go. So it's kind of weird that a language that is that has some similarities to C++, can be as flexible as being able to just write an API in it without worrying too much about it. So
and that was my next thing. So what's the deployment hosting thing? If it is it like on Windows, it's an exe, it's a an app on Mac. Like, how are we getting to the deployment side of things? Do I have to have a special runtime in AWS or Azure or
Honestly,
Google?
a lot of the cloud services kind of take care of it for you. They're like,
Okay.
you can do an AWS Lambda function in Go. So you just, write the Go code and Lambda will
it
take
knows
care
how
of
to
it.
run
Or
it.
you can do the GC.
But it's not running in like Chrome's V8 like Node would.
No.
It has
not.
its own.
I believe in order to do anything that requires Go, you do have to install the Go runtime. It's not that big. So
Sure.
I mean, it's not as big of a deal. But yeah, if you're allocating like a cloud resource that's your own box,
Yep.
I think Go has to get installed first, and then everything will run.
Okay.
But I believe if you compile it as an app, it doesn't have the pre-requirement of Go being installed someplace.
Okay.
Because I think
because then it includes it with it.
I think it
Okay.
includes everything that it needs when it's just a program
Sure.
in the program.
And then are you specifying like Linux, Windows? Is that a fork in the tree of where do you want to go?
Most of the time that I was preparing the talk, I was focusing just on building in Linux because that was the machine that was
Sure.
handy. But I know that it just working was really great when I had an old Surface Pro and a Linux laptop that were typically the two places that I was doing code. And I put Hugo on both of them, wrote the same code, would bring it up and down from GitHub, and no matter where I was, it would build consistently from one to the other, and I could just send the code out regardless of where I built it to begin with.
Interesting.
Which is kind of cool.
And I'm assuming then, based on that there's not a bunch of, I don't want to say pound up statements, but on Linux do it this way versus Windows do it that way. That's all hidden behind the scenes on Go.
Yeah, I mean you can import like OS level commands.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get my hands that wet with that, but I believe you can kind of indicate more operating system
Sure.
specific stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah,
I don't really know that that they make it a
I'm
requirement
thinking of
at the front.
certain Node packages at times have.
Oh yeah, this just plain doesn't work in this language.
Right, and
I mean, it was one of
they're
the reasons,
close, but there's always that extra 5-10%.
One of the reasons why I ended up going with Hugo with Go, it was because when I'm making the static site generate, I didn't have to worry about making Jekyll and Node behave in Windows before doing anything.
There you go.
Which sometimes it works in a Windows environment, and sometimes you have a bad time. And I didn't want that to be the stopping point before being productive.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing that drew me to the language and the framework to begin with.
Yeah.
And I figure if it worked for me that way, it's possible that other people would find that appealing.
Yeah, I mean, I started using OS 10 and a Mac many years back, and I just having to wait for updates and all that stuff is just like
there's a certain,
horrendous.
Yeah, there's an empowerment that comes with just being able to be productive as quickly as possible and not having the mental overhead of what else needs to get done, and if it happens, will I lose everything?
Right. Yeah. What about ecosystem? One of the things that's so great about Node and NPM and that thing is it's enabled this endless possibility through its ecosystem of just kind of let's go do, right? And I think, and maybe I'm a little bit bullish on this, I think NPM doesn't really always get enough credit in the disruption they made in this open source world of sharing and quickly including in something. And I mean, there's now other package managers and whatnot, but they really kind of
creating a mechanism to share and use is a very powerful thing for languages. Go is actually in the process of trying to figure out how to do that as appropriately and effectively as possible. The new version of Go is introducing a new way of doing package management that includes semantic versioning.
Okay.
So you can say, this version worked, can I just get this version please? But it's still, because the language is a little bit younger, you're still, the community is still in the process of kind of figuring out how that works, which is not to say that there's nothing useful, as far as getting things going. I brought down Google's Vision API and some sample code, and I was up and running, sending test images to the Google Cloud and getting back image tags within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So there's definitely positive things that work well, but
Yeah.
it is still a work in progress because the language is quite a bit younger than a lot of other
Yeah.
ones who've had, some advantages and head starts in trying to get that right.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna reboot and start over, and it's a good time to kind of re-baseline and ask yourself what's really important. And
Exactly.
I think that's a cool thing. What about getting up to speed? So how does, we've talked about it, we've kind of described a bit of what Go is, it's pretty cool, whatnot. How does one then go learn more?
One of the things that really surprised me is that the Go webpage. You just go to Go.
Go to Go.
Yeah, well,
That
no,
would be a great
Go to
great
Go?
website.
That would be.
Go to Go. Go to Go.
Go to Go.
Go to Go.now.
Yeah, there we go. Go's language website includes a tour of Go, which allows you to write code, test it in the browser, see the output, and learn a concept before moving forward. So it's got kind of that node school type feel,
Okay.
where they introduce you a concept, they show you code that may display parts of that concept, they allow you to edit to see what happens when you change things.
Sure.
And you see, is it a result? Is it a compile time error? What did I expect to happen, and what is actually happening? Just through a wide array of different parts of the language to get you bite-sized success quickly. Just
I
as
like the way you put
going
that.
to a website and
Yeah.
seeing what it's about and finding out that you've actually learned 2 or 3 things before you
Yeah.
realize that you haven't even downloaded the framework onto your machine
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
There's another site called Go by Example,
Okay.
which again gives you a general concept and then says, hey, you might want to work on this, which it does a similar code in the browser thing, or you can bring it down onto your local machine and do the same exercises, copy the code.
Sure.
I found YouTube pretty useful because the people who made the language are alive and keep talking. There are YouTube.
Yeah, there's
there are
something to
YouTube
be
talks
said for
where,
that.
Where Rob Pike, one of the creators of
Yeah.
the language, is saying, "So interfaces, they're kind of confusing. Here's how they're powerful. Here's how to use them more appropriately." And you can hear the creator of the language talk for an hour about a feature that's a little bit difficult to understand, but powerful once you get a better hold of it.
Sure.
And so there are Go specific conferences that I have not yet attended.
Yeah.
But they have posted their videos online, and I was able to kind of absorb
Rock a
some
lot
of that
from
from hearing someone else talk about it, or talk about things that they did wrong, or wish they had done better when they
Yeah.
were starting.
Yeah.
Try to learn from the mistakes of
Yeah.
others, and try to get as many bite-sized successes as you can in order
Yeah.
to try to get, or in order to desire to do more
Sure.
in the language. Find a project, do a thing,
Yeah.
get something done.
Yeah, I would say, do you find yourself as this is something that's now kind of in your toolbox and you're using it more on a daily basis of like, hey, I need to go do thing. I could do thing pretty easily in Go, or I could do it in Node. I'm gonna use Go.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed is like you can web scrape in a lot of things. So what one of the things that I'm super into is the NFL draft.
Yep.
I really like paying attention to draft eligible prospects over time, now before the college football season starts to the time that the college football season ends, and then the several months after where nobody's playing football but the rankings still change.
Sure.
And so one of the ways to do that is to take random web pages that have rankings of these athletes and convert them to either a CSV or some sort of set of data that you can then chart over time.
Yep.
And so one of the ways that I've been doing it in the past is just copy, paste, put it into a Google Sheet, and then try to do all of the data wrangling myself. This time they changed the format of the web page that I was scraping from that made that basically impossible.
Yep.
And so I said, well, I did just learn a fair amount of Go, and I know that one of the things you can do with Go is use Kali, which is a web scraping framework that allows you to use Go code to just get data from web pages. Maybe this seems like a good thing to do, and so I was able to take a kind of, let's say, peculiar set of HTML formatting, like with breaks and not just a table, but still get
Make
the
it
information
useful.
that I wanted,
Sure.
and make it useful without having to spend hours every single time getting the data the way that I wanted.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely is something that I think about when trying to solve a problem. Is scratching the fun project itch for sure.
Yeah, it's funny you when you were talking about using like importing something into a Google Sheet.
Yeah.
I know one thing that we do for that conference is we use we used all the Google app side of things, and we have a lot of code that sits behind those sheets. So like if we want to change the schedule, like the schedule is in a spreadsheet that's linked to our APIs, and we do the manipulation kind of through that way. And they're pretty behind in their JavaScript journey, if you will, which is funny because the Google app side of things is, I would say, pretty far ahead in its experience, but the programming side, it's like, could we at least get to the latest version of JavaScript? It's actually funny that there's not Go support in the back end of that.
Well, I know that if you start from the Go end, I'm pretty sure that Go plays pretty nice with the Google suite of products. I believe you can take data and put it into Google Sheets or Firebase. So I know that the support happens from the Go side.
Sure.
But I know that looking at a Google Sheet, there was nothing when I was looking at just the blank sheet of rectangles that said, oh yeah, Go would happen here. That wasn't something that I was thinking about when I was just looking at a Google Sheet. So so it was a very one-sided kind of application of that where it would have been nice to know, oh yeah, programmatically, you can get stuff in here.
Yeah.
There's ways to do it, but nobody's going to tell you about it when you just open up a blank sheet.
Yeah. There's in the tools, there's a script editor.
Yeah.
And I mean, we just use the hell out of that thing. Like it's amazing. We have our own menu in there. I mean, the stuff that we facilitate through some Google spreadsheets is crazy, but Go would probably be a better fit than certainly the older versions of JavaScript.
You'd hope. Well, I mean, the goal is that something would be, modularized, small, effective, and quick, so that it's doing exactly what it should be doing, quickly and as many times as you need it to do it.
Right, for sure. Well, listen, Ross, I appreciate this dive into Go. It's kind of funny to say that, but you're not without getting asked the question, which is, how would you define community?
So there's an answer, but there's also a way to not answer. If you have to define community, you don't have it, which is kind of a cop-out. So the way that I would describe community is it's a group of people with either a common purpose or a common set of identity who then work with each other to provide both support and accountability in order to be a healthy group of people.
Sure. Now, how long have you thought about that answer?
Well, I did do the 30-second
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You're a good
man. Tried to figure out how to put it on Twitter, and then I'm like, oh, if you record it beforehand, you got to put it on YouTube first. Great. Well, I suppose I should think about what I say.
You can actually put it. You can actually record directly in Twitter.
You have to do it live though. You have to say I'm doing
it has
a tweet,
to be live,
and then you push the record button, and then you have to start.
Oh yeah, that's no room for error.
Because I had never done it before, I didn't know if it was being sent out as I was recording.
Oh yeah, totally.
Or like if I had because I know with a picture you can say, did I take the picture right? But I didn't know with the video, so I didn't really want to try to do that in production, because that's the point. At least somebody would run into me or knock something over and be like, oh yeah, well that's on the internet forever.
Yeah.
Great.
And delete.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's cool. Well, Ross, hey,
thanks.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for speaking. Thank you for everything that you do in the community every day, because I know you're super active in it.
It is a privilege.
I love that we've been able to have this conversation, and I would ask everybody who's watching, if you're using Go, let us know. What are you using it for? Like, how are you using it? How do you think it's worked out well? Drop us a comment, a like.
Yeah, also on That Conference page, the link to my session has a link to the GitHub repository with the presentation notes, and all of the code samples.
There you go.
Including the web scraper that I wrote, the Vision API where I took a picture of you and turned it into fun.
That's nice. So you added the session links.
Yeah.
Good on you. Well done. All right, with that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.